Susan woke craving a wild leap, not skydiving, but something just as terrifying, admitting Dandelion tea worked. 50 years old, Sydney sun blazing, she clutched her chipped world's okayest mum mug, its dregs still warm from last night's brew. Beach BBQs had lost their charm when hot flashes turned her into a human sparkler. But this. Steeping weeds in her kitchen felt ridiculous until it didn't. Herbal tea workshops whispered promises of sisterhood, of roots deeper than menopause's chaos. Susan creator craved a wild leap, not skydiving, but something to shake loose this invisible straitjacket of hot flashes and sleepless nights. Sydney's summer hummed outside, all beach BBQs and salt-kissed breezes, yet she felt like a mismatched jigsaw piece in her own life. That chipped sunflower mug, rescued from a flea market years ago when she still believed in endless time, sat empty on counter. Its cheerful yellow mocked her. Menopause wasn't just sweat-drenched sheets or forgetting her neighbor's name mid-sentence. It was eerie quiet of a clock winding down, a fear sharper than any hot flush, becoming irrelevant, a ghost in her own story. She'd spent decades nurturing kids, clients, that basil plant she still overwatered, but who nurtured her? Then, a flyer for an herbal tea workshop, tucked between takeout menus. Creator hesitated, imagining granola vibes and earnest chanting. But desperation outweighed pride. She went, fumbling with jars of dried dandelion root, its earthy scent unlocking a memory, childhood summers, blowing wishes into puffballs, believing they'd reach sky. Brewing her first cup home, steam curled like old promises. Each sip was bitter warmth, a rebellion against narrative that aging meant fading. By third mug, something shifted, not magic, but steadiness. Her joints still creaked, her mind still blanked on passwords, but straitjacket loosened. She wasn't disappearing, she was steeping. Sydney's dusk painted harbour gold as Susan raised her mug to window. 50, flawed and finally free, not from menopause, but from fear of being undone by it. Dandelion didn't apologize for its weeds. Neither would she. Woman woke craving a wild leap, not skydiving, but something to shake loose that sticky feeling clinging to her since menopause started throwing surprise hot flashes like uninvited guests at beach barbecue. 50 years old and suddenly her body had its own chaotic weather system. She needed a fix that didn't involve sweating through another linen blouse or pretending she enjoyed kale smoothies. That's how she found herself squinting a chalkboard outside a tiny shop in Newtown, its letters curling like steam, herbal remedies for change. Inside, mismatched mugs crowded shelves, each one telling stories in chipped glaze. A woman with silver braids and a grin that said I've survived worse handed woman a cup of dandelion tea. Roots good for balance, she said, as if reading Susan's jumbled vibes. First sip tasted like earth and rebellion, nothing like perfumed teas she'd choked down before. Warmth spread, not oppressive kind, but a slow, steady hum. By third workshop, grinding roots, learning which leaves held moonlight best, Susan realized mug in her hands wasn't just holding tea. It was a compass. Back home, she ditched pity-party pamphlets and hosted her own gathering, serving dandelion brew alongside snarky jokes about hot flashes doubling as free sauna sessions. Neighbors laughed, then leaned in. Even Marjorie from next door, who'd once side-eyed Susan's hippie nonsense, asked for a second cup. Months later, watching sunset paint Bondi Beach gold, Susan raised her favorite mug, now stained with stubborn tannins, to horizon. Menopause hadn't softened, but she'd grown roots of her own. And damn if they weren't unshakable. Woman craved a wild leap, not skydiving, but something just as terrifying, admitting she needed help. 50 years of stubborn independence had left her scoffing herbal remedies, yet here she stood in a Sydney health food shop, squinting dandelion tea like it might bite. Menopause had become a relentless beach barbecue where someone kept turning up heat, and she was done being sausage sizzling on grill. Her first sip tasted like dirt with commitment issues. But desperation outweighed pride. She choked it down, half expecting miracles, half expecting to keel over. Neither happened. Instead, a quiet shift, less fire in her cheeks, fewer midnight battles with sheets. Small wins, but enough to make her dig deeper. She signed up for a herbal tea workshop run by a no-nonsense woman who looked like she'd wrestled a kangaroo and won. Between grinding roots and steeping petals, creator learned dandelion wasn't just a weed but a survivor, thriving in cracks and abandoned lots. Much like her, really. Mug she carried everywhere became a battle flag, chipped, stained, stubbornly holding warmth. Old doubts crept in. Maybe it was placebo vibes. Maybe she was just thirsty. But then her best mate dragged her to Bondi for sunset drinks, and instead of sweating through her shirt like a failed ice sculpture, she felt fine. Not cured, not invincible, but fine. That counted. By time she hosted her own backyard tea circle, passing around steaming cups to women who'd also been told to just tough it out, Susan realized leap wasn't in drinking, it was in admitting. Menopause hadn't made her fragile, it made her a goddamn dandelion. Rooted where she stood, refusing to be plucked. Woman woke craving a wild leap, not skydiving, but something that would shake her world without breaking a hip. 50, she'd spent months sidelined by hot flashes, her confidence evaporating faster than morning dew on Sydney's Bondi Beach. That changed when she stumbled upon an old mug of flea market, its chipped glaze painted with dandelions. A sign, she decided. 3 days later, she stood in a community hall, hands trembling around that same mug, facing 20 skeptical women, a beachside barbecue fundraiser. Her impromptu herbal rebellion workshop promised dandelion tea could tame menopause's chaos. A silver-haired skeptic in front row snorted into her Chardonnay. Susan's stomach lurched until she remembered brew steaming in her hands. She poured, her voice steadying. "This isn't grandma's," said chamomile. "It's liquid spine." Crowd leaned in as she detailed how wild-harvested roots eased her night sweats, her punchline landing like a dare. "Menopause didn't break me. It just made me harder to ignore." Then, disaster. A rogue elbow sent her mug crashing. Gasps filled room. Woman froze, then grinned. "See? Even dandelions fight back." As laughter erupted, someone snapped a photo, Susan, mid-cackle, surrounded by golden petals someone had tossed like confetti. By midnight, that image had gone viral in a menopause support group. A local news producer slid into her DMs, a wellness brand begged to collaborate. But Susan's victory wasn't in clicks, it was in skeptics silently pressing a dandelion into her palm after crowd dispersed. Walking home, Susan sipped fresh tea from a paper cup, Bondi's salt air mixing with earthy steam. For first time in years, her body felt like hers. No apologies, no flinching. Just a woman, a mug, and quiet thrill of thinking, "I finally belong here." Susan woke craving a wild leap, not skydiving, but something that wouldn't terrify her knees. 50 years young, menopause had her sweating through sheets like a Sydney summer barbecue. Then she stumbled onto dandelion tea, bitter as her ex's texts but magic for hot flashes. That chipped mug, once just a vessel for caffeine, became her anchor, steaming proof little rebellions could soothe big changes. She didn't stop sipping. With vibes more infectious than a yawn in a yoga class, Susan launched herbal tea workshops in her garage. Nervous newbies clutched mugs like lifelines while she guided them, laughing through steeping mishaps. Menopause isn't a malfunction, she'd say, it's an upgrade, with occasional buffering. Word spread faster than sunscreen. Bondi Beach. Soon, her ragtag circle swapped cortisol for chamomile, proving community brewed stronger than isolation. Now, Susan's mug travels, perched on picnic blankets, past potlucks, a humble icon of reinvention. Age? Just a number, like how many times she'd rewatched Practical Magic. Her legacy? Not flawless skin, but fearless joy. Because healing isn't a solo hike, it's a conga line. Steep your rebellion, sip, share, shine.